I mentioned to myself, hi, everybody. This is Ed, and I am here on.
Give it another 20 seconds. It's warming up. The tube is warming up on YouTube.
Good.
And here we go. All right, let me close this.
Hi, everybody. This is the online pagan Pride Day for Fusion Sound. Got that right?
You do.
That was a tongue twister. So you're in the year of the COVID. You're in the year of the rise of the TechnoMagick. Last year, there was a lot of conversations about this idea. But before I begin, I want you to go ahead and remember this, because this is in honor of the ancestors. And we're going to do a morning ritual. We're going to do a lot of things over the next couple of months. I think it's going to change our society. But that which remembers lives. That's an essential rule of us. This is an essential rule of where the TechnoMagick idea comes from. So what do we mean by TechnoMagick? We've been calling things TechnoMagick for 30, 40, 50 years. The idea of it, and I've lived my whole life with it. So what is a TechnoMagick? The idea is that technology and magic have a common formula. Arthur C. Clarke said it best. He said, a sufficiently advanced magic technology will appear as magic. And the colloquium, the opposite of it, is no technology that is sufficiently advanced doesn't look like magic. It has to look like magic to be a sufficiently advanced technology. And we live in an incredibly rich technological zone. So we have always been a technological society. We've always been an industrial society. 100,000 years ago or more, we began to use the sticks to reach the highest piece of the fruit. And we started to create these tools. Our tools we make our tools, and our tools make us. It's a very important ideology. And so we started using tools, and today we are using tools for all sorts of purposes. So let's go ahead and start with a very basic idea. The rise of the TechnoMagick is the rise of imagination. You have to accept things that are to be created. The imagination, Terence McKenna said, imagination, reality is a condensation of imagination by us all. But basically, we begin in this forward process of being an imaginative person, a strongly unique and creative sort of space called the imagination. And everybody says, oh, it's just your imagination. And that is the first honest mistake that we all make, because honest imagination allows us to conceive and perceive the way that everything works, the way everything that we've ever been. What made us different is called Yale, who wrote the book Sapiens, said about 70,000 years ago, we began to have the ability to just tell stories. And in this idea of telling stories and the idea of linking stories, we are able to basically set aside and be able to begin this sort of amazing ideology of where we are existing. And so 70,000 years ago, we began this ability to share a common story. My God is like your God. That was one of the first things. We are like you. And though we do not know you, we can go ahead and network. We can go ahead and trade. We can go ahead and share things. We can go ahead and interbreed. And we're discovering now, 100,000 years ago, we were interbreeding like crazy. There were like 8 or 9 different human races. And this idea is, I think, seeks into us for a very long time. So my name is Ed, and I am kind of one of the weirdest practitioners of paganism and magic out there. Is that I'm a deep believer in in this sort of idea of technospace. I think there's something deeply metaphysical about it. There certainly is this idea. I mean, this is a wormhole. I can call anybody in the world that I can get their contact information and have a conversation, a visual, an audio experience. And in the next generation, we're going to have augmented reality in that. Very important. That which remembers lives. Remember that. And so we have this phone, and I can even broadcast from it. See, I can go ahead and I can broadcast myself. I can start another whole line of things. And then with that technology, I've changed the world. And understand how fast technology involves us. So this 40 years ago, 50 years ago, was $60 million. Oh yeah, $60 million and took up the size of a stadium. Today, our ability of technology has become a million times cheaper, a million times smaller, and 1,000 times more productive. We've entered into a certain time. So last year, I was really talking about the hybridization of festivals. I was talking about all these sort of ideologies about transforming how we deal with magic. I even started talking about some of the ideas that cyberspace is psychic space. What's an Alexa or a Siri or Dr. Watson for that matter? You know who Dr. Watson is? Watson, the machine that beat Jeopardy, has gone on to become, well, there's Operator Watson, who's now taking over jobs of phone centers. Oh yeah, they're being able to do a better job and they're improving all the time. Dr. Watson, which is famous now, it's everybody's buying into Dr. Watson, which is the medical system of this AI that won Jeopardy. Same thing. I want to get one of these days very soon. So we're starting to see this sort of AI, these sort of cyber spirits. And why do I call them cyber spirits? So certainly, first, let us start our technology. The idea of our technology is based on code. What are wizard spells and magical based on? Symbolism. Code is symbolism that machines understand, that we've programmed from zeros and ones. We literally have existed and created an entire psychic space, a cyberspace that is nothing but imagination acting on the real world. We are now using our imagination into cyberspace. And in order to interpret it, we have to use a code of zeros and ones. And then from there, we get all sorts of these languages. Who knew that it's just two numbers for 0 and 1? Well, our ancestors did. We've always known that 0 and 1 have been the sort of quantifiable things. We've always known this. And this is one of those things that they've seen, that they couldn't even perceive what nothing was, so they started writing ones. Roman numerals did not have a 0. Arabic numbers brought us to 0, the concept of nothing. And that transformed us. Everything transforms us in our technological. So the rise of the TechnoMagick is really coming down to the idea of starting to use our tools. Our tools make us. So we're now using these programmable tools to expand our mind in the same way that cars expanded our legs. We could never ride as far as we could in a car. And it took us a long time. We didn't like cars. People were mad about cars. People hated cars. There was electricity, hated it. This whole piece about spiders kind of destroying people. Every technological advance is met with extreme resistance. First, it's laughed at, and then it comes with extreme resistance and even violent opposition. Then it becomes self-evident. How many of you would say that you would never have had a cell phone? Come on, be honest with me. Be honest with us all. How many people said we would not use a cell phone? The no people almost always lose. So as a technomage, I have, so what have I done? And so one of the things before we get into the really deep part of this, and I'm going to do so, and I'm going to ask you, if you're on YouTube or anyone else, share this video, because at 21 minutes after, I am going to actually say something that is going to change the way I exist in a major way. It's about a transformation that I'm bringing about. And I want to share that with you because it's in the process of occurring. Literally, real-time events keep doing it. So let me go ahead. And so one of the biggest things, so what is the number one creation of the 21st century? Networking. Networking human beings is beyond all Metcalfe's law, all the value of being a network has been the number one invention of the 20th century. People would argue with me. But we first had the idea of tom-toms. How do we communicate today? So we had runners and tom-toms. Boom, boom, boom. And there were other methods. We had mirrors. We had all sorts of ways to communicate at a distance. But telegraph was the first usage of electrical energy in our modern times. I'm not getting at that. I'm not getting at that. We're hoping that we are going to actually deal with it in a magical way. So electricity started coming in, and that's the important part, electricity. Ben Franklin played with it. We've had all sorts of pieces. Yeah, and we've sort of had this sort of electricity. And so, yes, we are here. We are at instantaneous communication, Renee. We are absolutely recording this to YouTube. So that's an amazing thing. Imagine all of that. So I'm going to get back to this. So we had this idea that electricity and telegram went across. And what was that? It was literally zeros in the sense of long zeros and short zeros, and ones and long zeros. So space, one, space, longer, space, that. And we learned to communicate very rapidly over these massive electrical wires. Today, we would call it so wasteful, so resourceful. But we threw ourselves into beginning the first communication with this intelligent energy called electricity. Electricity is intelligent, trust me. You'll see this as you go along. And then we get into the age of the telephone. And you know telephones were considered a hazard. Oh, people hated them. Electricity, telegraphs. But we as soon as we saw their usefulness, we hadn't used it. And so basically, in understanding this, as a technomage, a network of one has the value of one. It's all they can affect it. One person can affect it. I'm not saying that one person can't do an amazing amount of work, and they do. But in this sort of idea of the technomage, it's one means one. Two means you have two communications. And so you can go back and forth. Add a third person, and you have four communications. Add a fourth person, and you have up to 16 different combinations you can deal with. So, in fact, networking is the way we as human beings have been working for a long time in the past. But now with this electronics of the telephone, we were able to communicate faster and change the way that we work. We went from like, oh, we'll never have a telephone. We have group phones and everything else too. Synthetic telepathy, the ability to transmit sound in all its forms, visuals in all its forms, utilizing electricity, which has been energized with my thoughts to anywhere in the world. Kind of a social, political cell phone, wormhole. Imagine if it's a wormhole. I can literally talk to almost anybody in the world. And through this Zoom, another sort of kind of interesting and relatively inexpensive and frictionless system, I can actually communicate with you. And when we get into it, at 25 after, I'm going to start asking questions. Remember, 21 minutes, and I'll be opening it up to allow for questions and sort of thing. So let me go ahead and talk about it. I'm going to do something a little out of character here. Since that, and so the rise of the technomage is the way we communicate. And so one of the best things you can do, first of all, is understand your digital aura. Let's get into the deep end. Are you ready? I hope so. I've seen the chats out there. So the digital aura begins wherever you make a free will choice. Got it? Your aura also begins there too. We're talking about the energetic body that you have. We're talking about, when we're talking about an aura, we're talking about all your chakras, we're talking about all the wonderful things people have said all through this. And you can learn a lot about what that energetic body is. But once that energetic body intercrosses into my world, which is the digital world, you begin to leave traces of yourself. Where you're participating, where your body exists, where everything exists. According to this everything is that you start leaving trails behind. And you have a free will choice. What's your first free will choice in the digital world? Am I going to show up? Am I even going to do it? And I did that 25, almost 30 years ago now. Oh my gosh. I feel so old sometimes about this. I made a decision to enter the digital world. We called it the internet. We called it forums. I joined it even before the World Wide Web became. And so we started being able to communicate. We thought this was so cool. And I still think it's really cool. And that we would see that improvement. So 30 years ago, more or less, I was getting on to CompuServe and Prodigy, playing in the well with our forums and things like that. Today, I am running a full-fledged broadcast company. And that is the ability to basically send audio, visual, things of that nature. I've also, and so in this practice, you can join a lot of different individuals. We can bring them all together. So a true technomage can create change through networked communication. Got it? So we are now into network communication, and we're able to share a spell. We're able to share a ritual. We're able to say, You can check it out every month. I do crystal web rituals, or more importantly, Lord Don and Reverend and Lady Lori do. We've got a crystal web. That's an actual physical web. You haven't heard of it? So no, for the last 32 years, I, along with many others, have been placing crystals all over the world that we will align magically and telepathically and energetically. And we have a map in cyberspace of all these crystals where we lend energy to and draw energy from. And we've used it for all sorts of amazing abilities. Last year at Halloween, I projected a reality called the Oracle. And I wanted to draw more Oracle energy into the internet. I did. My exact goal. You can see it. And I don't have to explain. People go, oh, really? You did that? Can you show me? Absolutely. It's taped, it's recorded, and its ability. Remember, that which will remembers lives. It's a very important point. Remember that. If you don't remember anything else with a speech, remember that. But so, okay, so you got your digital aura, and it's any way you make your free cheese. So everything you say on Facebook has been recorded. Every email you've had has been recorded. You can erase them if there's somewhere out there. Every video you've created, every message you create, every account that you've ever entered and forgotten about, every time you've shopped, every time you've existed on the internet, you've created data or information. You literally cannot enter the internet without creating data. It just can't exist. It doesn't exist that way. And so in that process, you have to understand, you're then leaving your digital aura out there. You're leaving your energies out there. And sometimes you lose it. So I lost my GeoCities. Somewhere in my files, I have my GeoCities sites. Do you know GeoCities? At one time, the fastest growing city in America and then the world. It was a system that made building websites accessible very early on. And we did it for a while and we built it. And now it is an archaeological fact that we did this. It now exists somewhere else. I was one of the first list people to be out there. One list out there went from one list to e-groups to Yahoo groups. And just last year, it got shut down. We have to store emails. So you have to understand, we're constantly moving our network. I was on MySpace, now Facebook. And I joined MeWe yesterday. Yeah, Ed Hubbard 1. They wouldn't give me my Ed the Pagan. I'm working on that. And so your digital aura begins where your free will is in all of your sort of relationships. Now, I've been a very fortunate individual because I was given a moniker back in 95, 96 by a major radio station in Chicago, WLS Radio, and they called me Ed the Pagan. And then, of course, when I started my AOL account and they wanted my email account, in those 10 letters, it was Ed the Pagan. And that has now become an identifier for me. Deep down, that's a keyword situation. So for me to be remembered and to be created in this world, Ed the Pagan is now something you can look up 25 years later, and we continue to have that as an identifier. Where it begins is where my free will starts. And so now I have a Twitter account, a Facebook account. All of this creates a sort of things. And why is it essentially important? Because what is remembered lives, and your digital aura leaves a set of energies out there that you could affect things. Just simply that. It's the first step you have to understand. Your ability to affect the interface of the internet with the world is based on the power of your digital aura. So technomages pay attention to the digital aura. And what is it that you want for your digital aura? You want to have as much cohesion and control as possible at your interface level, where you face the internet. And then you can go ahead and do incredible things. So you can build all sorts of things. So one of the biggest projects I've got is the Chancellor Don, Lord Don, who has videoed himself over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos and has thousands of pages of text. And he has all sorts of these sort of things. And we're working within the next 2 years to put him in an AI format so that people in the future can speak to him. That's right. We're going to create an immortal version of him because he has over 400 questions. His books are going to be coming out with it. He has literally teachings on video and audio that he's been building up for over years. And we're going to put that onto a AI framework so that he exists for as long as the AI world exists. So that's really what's about to change. So let me offer, because I promised you something in a minute. Are you willing to start thinking in exponential terms? The problem with most humanity is that we have existed in a linear and local fashion. Nothing is more important to us than local and linear. And what do I mean by local and linear? I mean literally where your body is, where your mind can see. Mostly our empathy has been one of these things where it's limited to our line of sight. We're only really have empathy for those around us. We worry about the tiger attacking us. We need that linear ability. That tiger is coming at us pretty fast. Which way do I move? And which way? And if you really want to defend yourself, if you're a warrior, where do I put the spear? Where do I shoot the arrow? Where do I fire the gun? So at 21 minutes, I'm going to tell you that one of the things is, so one of the best things about what's happening right now is that we're on this ground level. We can literally build a pagan world. So this digital format is the same thing as changing the world with fire. This is a form of fire into cyberspace. Cyberspace is real space. So I'm going to offer you this idea. So not only is cyberspace psychic space, what is clairvoyance? The ability to see through any camera. Clairaudience, the ability to hear through any microphone. Psychometry, to know the history of an item by looking. There's so many aspects of this that you can't, what is going to be astral projection, but VR, we create realities for ourselves. What are the Akashic records, but the record of everything? We are about to start the eternal next civilization. And the hardest part for us as pagans and Wiccans and so many different others is not only are we technologically adverse, some of us, I'm not. I love TechnoMagick. I have now done all sorts of things with it. I've built online schools. I have built online churches. I've built online rituals. I've done a newspaper. I've done radio stations. I've done a television station. And now I'm in the beginning of building a really broadcasting company at a nominal cost. I'm going to help guide a morning ritual on Halloween that'll be global. I've already done that sort of thing. I've helped festivals build online. I love the sort of ontological designing of tools so that we become understanding our ability as thou art God, we are God. You know, thou art God, we are God. We together are God. And the internet, it gives us a first tremendously great opportunity to exercise some of those abilities. You know, the 2020 has done an amazing job of moving us. So I own Pagan World. I own a lot of names, so we're moving towards that. And one of the things I'll give you next that we're building is the psychic fair. And in that psychic fair, because the physical one collapsed, remember, I casted a spell at Oracle a year ago, or Halloween, and I said I wanted it to be online. And now this year we're going to do a Halloween psychic fair. And I'm going to create something called a nexus, which means I'm bringing 3 online services together to create a efficient and useful service to simulate a psychic fair, like the Salem psychic fair that I was at last year. I'm going to do a lot of that. We're going to have classes. We're going to have all of that. And some of this was inspired, I guess, by things that happened. The pagan world, we can do anything we want, any world we can imagine. And so now I'm going to go on a moment's tangent, and then we're going to take questions. So where do you think you're going with all of this? I mean, I'm serious. Where do you think this is all going? Everybody has fought me. A lot of people have fought me over the years over it and found out, no, we're going this direction. So within a couple of years, on September 16th, Facebook Connect begins, and that is going to be the #1 selling product this year. It's going to be the Oculus lenses. And basically, Facebook is going to create the next step. And right now, it's going to seem bulky and everything else, but it's going to be the next step of the VR, which is going to be VR social networking. Absolutely. And we have our Discord systems. We have all of our sudden explosion of systems, including Zoom. Don't discount Zoom. Zoom is an extremely high value. So let me go ahead and tell you. So now you've got your digital orders. So what is the first thing you can do? If you're a business person, you need to take advantage of it. TikTok, you heard about TikTok. People have gone off. Everybody can tell you all those things. But what's super important, if you're going to be a technomage, is to control your core program. What is your core program? Your core program is your brain, your spirit, and your soul, and where it interfaces with the internet, such as today you're seeing me. So I'm interfacing here, and it's being recorded, and it's going to be shared. And in 50 years from now, it's going to be hopefully some of my family members go, wow, I want to know when the world changed, when 2020 brought us this massive change in technological magic. And so that we can begin this sort of age of TechnoMagick. And what can you do with TechnoMagick? We need to put in places so that cyber spirits, such as Siri and Alexa, and through our wizardly codes, will answer our voice responses. How interesting if we can start taking over these sort of energetic beings. Think about what this is saying. Energetic beings that we are creating to serve us that have no physical representation except for a few pieces of crystal inside a system. And then it basically reacts to us. We're the Dawn Star ancestors. We have an amazing opportunity. We have tremendous leverage. We have free and low-cost resources that will never, ever be available again. We are finding gold in the stream of 1849. We're finding the silver in the mountains of Rome in the 600 BC. We are finding fire at the beginning of this history. We are drawing cave paintings. And what is the final step of a technomage? Technomage isn't about practicing magic or technology. It is about becoming the art of expressing human will into those places. Simply put, a technomage puts their will into the environment they live in. And if that environment is a digital one, they place it there for a long and lasting moment. If it's in physical, same thing. More of that about that. So let me offer this one last piece. This is about our ancestors. But the truth is, how much of our ancestors do we truly and honestly remember? How many of you know who Lady Shiva is? Do you know who Gerald Gardner is? It might sound simple, but there are a lot of people who don't. Ray Buckland. I can name people. Do you know who Donna Cole Schultz is, who made such a difference? Ed Fitch. Let's go further. Do you know who were the spirits out there that were 10 generations ago? Probably not. So we tell ourselves that which remembers lives. We're about to enter into time where there will be an eternal memory. Pagan World is one of my versions I'm hoping to create through this psychic fair I'm talking about, to create more and more places where someday, who knows, I might have my mind actually living in there. I certainly hope I get to there. That's called the singularity. I'd love to talk to you about the singularity, but that's the essential idea of where technology allows me to upload my mind into a cyberspace. That's my goal. I'm hoping for that. But even if that doesn't happen, all the pieces of me that exist right now in cyberspace will be drawn together, and my ancestors won't be remembered, but my descendants may remember me. We are creating an eternal mind. And even as this world starts to really collapse, even if the environment collapses, even if we go through a really rough time, and I'm not saying, and I actually have predicted that along with everybody else, cyberspace and all the parts of technology will allow us to transcend this moment and send messages into the future, eternal messages, as long as it's got electricity and people to care for them. We will now mark history in our own way. So a technomage takes all their visions, brings it to imagination, coalesces it into a sort of reality, and cyberspace gives us that way to share it amongst ourselves. So being a technomage means being willing to work at your advantage through creating things of your imagination, and by utilizing digital as well as physical assets, transform the world around them and control their environment in an ever-increasing way. And the very best of us are on the verge of having been remembered forever. That which remembers lives. How much do we want to remember our time now? That's the Rise of the TechnoMagick. So I will open it up for questions. If anyone has any, I always love that aspect of it. And you can be very nitty gritty, practical. I'm very well versed in the internet. I love the idea of it. Building a Tarot AI program, if you want to know about that. So certainly open that. There you go. Hey, Renee. You have to unmute.
I'm going to allow everybody to unmute themselves and.
Terrific. I love that. So Lawrence here has been like, we've known Lawrence as a credible part of it. So Lawrence has been a major kind of a person who's affected me on technology. I met him at the Parliament of World Religions in 2018. And he let me banter on some of my ideas about blockchain and creating coins.
Here's a question. How do you deal with like the internet as an unreliable source of information? I mean, it can range from, very fake, information about witchcraft and paganism to propaganda and disinformation.
Well, it's only the difference between now and 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago is scale. We've always dealt with this. It's not anything we've ever changed. It's just now we're dealing with it on scale. And so that's a really important aspect of it. I mean, we had strange books in the 70s. We had all of those supermarket books, and a lot of that was bull. We had Brad Stryger, who basically said he didn't do any research. He just took the story down and wrote it down. We're grateful he did that, but that was a very different idea. So we're dealing with scale. So what I'm really talking about is you have to basically to be a good technomagic, you have to really discern what you want and find the technology and the answers that you want. Now, the nice thing is with Twitter, I can actually see forest fires. People are out there in real time showing me the forest fires. You're talking about the riots. People are sending me in Twitter and other spaces are sending real pictures of the forest fire or the revolts in the streets. So we're taking real pictures. And that's what's really disturbing. So it's not really about the propaganda we're always hearing. We've always had that. In fact, we've had a gatekeeping that only allowed the 3 major networks to tell the entire story to the United States. Now we have all these other sources. So the freedom of having all these sources means we have to be just, who do we believe? And this is a really reality-changing paradigm that the TechnoMagick has to deal with, is that we actually have a moment where we are not in the same psychological or paradigm universe as each other. We're starting to see that separate. Okay, go ahead, Renee. Can you hear?
Yeah, hi, hello. Actually, my name's Peter. My wife's Renee. It's just her.
Okay.
Yeah, just for people, so people know. Hey, I was very fascinated with when you were talking about putting crystals all around the world and connecting it.
Yes.
Are you familiar with the LS sigil? It's the LS or the LS sigil. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of along the same lines as that, where you're creating this. It's going to become an interdimensional web of what you're talking about as a technomage, where you're able to bring all these energies and forces and thoughts, ideas, and people together. And with that being said, doing it on a physical level by putting crystals in there, we can do that on a techno platform where we can put these like ideas or nodes out there, creating almost like a spider web. And the same idea of what they do with the yellow sigil and what you did with the crystals. What are your thoughts on when we do that, and as we're doing that right now, creating a situation where we have multi-universes where we can jump from one universe to the other by what we put out there, and almost creating a second life in a sense?
So I think we're really close to that. So no matter what we're going to do, we're going to be on, we have a skin bias. We're going to have a meat bag bias for a long time. All right. We're also looking, so let me go ahead and tell you what's real out there. We already have Neuralink. It's already been being tested, you know, what we've shown to the public. We're going to be in these spaces. We're already just so dependent. How many people actually remember a telephone number? When I was growing up, it was super important that we remembered all the telephone numbers. We spend a lot of mental energy remembering telephone numbers because the ability to communicate is so important. So we're already beginning to build these alternative worlds. We have got Second Life temples. We've got, you know, I've been working in this sort of space. There have already been building of VR temples, right? We are also seeing full body VR systems. So we're already there. It's all just being engaged. So we have to start making a real decision on where we want to go. You know, we hear in the story, apotheosis is transcending into the heavens. You know, that sort of idea. Well, we might be able to control that. You know, what was it? It was Black Mirror who did San Pedro or San Bernardino, and where all the people were basically, when they died, they moved into these sort of cells of their afterlife. And we saw that sort of magic. So we can very much see anything we want. We are incredibly, to have this incredible ability. But we're going to have a meat body bias and we're going to have a physical bias for a long time, because Computernium or these systems have to live in the physical world for us at the time being, until we transcend that. So we're going to be, for several centuries, I think, developing these wonderful machines that expand our minds in the same way that cars and airplanes and factories expanded our muscle power. So our minds are now going to expand in the same way. Of us, instead of us just thinking a thought, right? We can communicate anywhere in the world. Not only will we be thinking about, we'll already begin processing it, the same as getting in behind a car and transporting ourselves 60 miles. Remember, our ancestors could not conceive of going 60 miles an hour. In fact, the people in the trains were saying, once we hit 60 miles an hour, we would be turned to jelly in 1834. They believed that. So we're always constantly changing that. But yeah, we're going to have multiple worlds. Yeah, we're going to have world builders. We are essentially now in the virtual world gods. And so I think that's just going to continue. And I don't know how it's going to end up. I do know that it's going to continue to do so. So I saw Megan put out there, given how much of technology advanced in the destruction of environment and the colonization of techno people who, how can technomages reinforce their worldview and while not undoing or not perpetuating these destructive elements? Simply by not doing it. You have to behave in a way. I'm very Noah arc right now. So we're in the 6th extinction event. We have been a long time. The world has been dying every year of my life more than it has survived until the year 2020. In fact, 2020 is the first year in my 57 years of existence where the world jumped back to life more than it died. All my life, the world has been dying. And all of your life, it's been dying. And so at some point, it will die so much that there will be no choice, but it'll start to collapse systems. And it'll change. But guess what? Evolution is a process. Now, I believe in the technium, the 7th order of life. I really do believe technology is a new order of life. Understand this. I do not think it's just anything. We're helping breed a second evolutionary force in this sort of world. But yes, and there's going to be this moment where the world's going to be pretty empty, and it's been there before. So then, I think within 300 years, we're going to have it sort of thing like that. But it's a longer process than people realize. We're going to feel it and things like that. But human beings are going to be so much involved with it that we're not going to see a huge die-off of human beings like everybody thinks. We're just going to continue in this sort of industrial civilization. And we will rewire the entire age based on this. If we're that, the entire next process will either be humans extincting themselves, which I do not believe is going to happen, or we're going to transform our environments. And at some point, I hate to say it, but we're going to be basically redesign the world. So right now, as pagans, saving seeds, saving genetics, raising animals, and being involved with it, buying land, buying property, buying servers, buying the technological infrastructure that we're going to need to survive is the essential set of being part of the next wave of civilization, there's no question that this one's going to collapse. So it is really a question as a pagan, and for me as a technomage, how much of this can I preserve? I actually have with the Order of Paladins, we are now trying to preserve vast amounts of pagan information and put it on flash drives in all sorts of ways of storing it in case something really horrific happens. I'm actually, what happens if the internet dies tomorrow? Well, it doesn't die, but what if it suddenly collapses as we know it? Well, there's still technology that'll still go on. Any other questions anyone might have? Yes, it is being recorded, absolutely. And that's an essential part. Remember, when we do all these sorts of recordings, we are actually creating this sort of long-term memory of the Akashic records. You cannot stop this sort of process of recording. You only can decide if you're going to be recorded or not. And this is really when I talk about Dawn Star Answers and the Rise of TechnoMagick. You are a Dawn Star Answer if you're a Rise of TechnoMagick. It means that you're at the very beginning of how these new memory systems. Imagine if you're in the beginning of the Encyclopedia Britannica. You get to decide how that's going to be organized. Well, essentially, we all now have the power to organize the next set of Akashic records. Where are we going to start to store these massive records that we have? I have over 6,000 hours of interviews with people that from around the world that have been involved with the pagan world. We have about 5,000 to 8,000 hours of video. We have massive amounts of data. We really can't, as the Corellian tradition, and we've been doing events all these years. So we've been recording these events. So this is the beginning of a technological thing. So let me offer you one. So in closing, how far can you get with TechnoMagick? Where is the magic of it, the world, when you apply it to the real world? Oh, good. Can you give me an example of how, I will answer this one. TechnoMagick images affect our physical now. So the number one way a technomage can affect their physical now is to be able to go ahead and monetize their words. That's right. If you do YouTube videos and you reach 1,000 subscribers and grab attention, you can make an income. Absolutely. That's just a very easy way. You can make something. So let me go ahead and tell you, you can go on to Craigslist right now. Find something that you know how you can fix it up. Get it for free, bring it home, fix it, go to Facebook Marketplace and sell it. And that energy exchange, you get to make a little bit of energy. The biggest way you can change though right now, sort of on a technomage level, is the level of attention that you want. The key element of a technomage is to be able to gather people's attention and direct it where you want to. So in essence, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want people to see you, their aspects of it? What is it that you want to accomplish? So let me give you a solid one. For me as a technomage, I am now building a psychic fair. And so I'm finding all the parts to give people an energy that feels like a real psychic fair. Let me give you another example of technomage. And Lawrence is out there, and I thank him for having me, is a technomage. We've always have been. We kind of believe that magic and technology is, and the ability to create this moment where which we can share across this sort of thing, to have this disaster of COVID come along, but we're still able to meet and create this sort of environment is exactly technomage work. At the beginning of the year, we did not have this capability. We kind of had it at the edge, and we were talking about it. We were getting ready for it. Believe it or not, this would have happened in 2021 anyway. And then we bring this forward. So now we have these Zoom moments to create. So that's another technomage. And I was ready because I practiced it, and I had the resources, and I had the ability to bring these things in and have people trained to do so. For me, that's an important part. So that's an absolute. Probably the biggest one, let me give you one more that's going to come up on October 31st, 2020, 9:49 a.m. is the second full moon of the month, or the full moon of on October, and we're going to do a morning ritual. And that morning ritual is going to be networked across the world. So it will be so many people networking together to practice a single moment of energy. The one that I'm most proud of, go ahead and look up Black Moon. if you ever look at Black Moon, you'll see one of my favorite tricks. Black Moon wasn't used prior to 1993, 92. While Tons is saying it, people have investigated it. Find it about the theater. Creating the idea of a meme and putting it into the world is a great thing. Black Moon was mine. It was a Black Moon covenant. We were celebrating the Black Moon, the opposite of Blue Moon. Today, it's rampant in our community, but it was really just was something we did because it was one of my magical practices, and that was a real high impact thing. So one of the last things, let me go ahead and give this last piece, and then so that which remembers lives. And so we have the first steps right now of an eternal mine of paganism. We have a way now to build the Akashic records of each individual and remember them. We have ways of sharing information that'll be so much more detailed in it, so much more important to it. So if we pay attention, really the power of the TechnoMagick is the ability to preserve our information, not only be able to project it, not only to send it out into the world, not only to attach itself to 1 billion people or the 2.2 billion that have transformed the world in our lives, but also to allow yourself and all our ancestors to be remembered. We are going to be remembered or we will be forgotten. And this day here, this speech right now, this moment here has a good chance of being seen somebody 50 years from now, 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now. Because we now have mastered intelligent energy, just as pagans and Wiccans have always done for spirits. We're now doing it for the electronic spirit of the digital world. And a TechnoMagick understands there's very little different between cyberspace and psychic space. We're about to live in a telepathic society, and it's coming fast. Thank you. And I hope that this was useful to you. I'm Ed the Pagan, so you can let me know anytime you want to.
Wonderful, Ed. Thank you so much. We still have a few minutes if anybody wants to bring up any other questions.
Julie Lovejoy, I believe. I'm halfway following you. Thank you. I want to give you, there's no such thing as a simplistic question. What would you recommend research for creating online rituals? First and foremost, the most important thing about an online ritual is intent. Same as always. You always get into your intent. So when you create an online ritual, get in your intent. And the second thing is basically then decide what your ritual is going to be like. If it's a long and complicated one, we had one we did across 8 countries and 38 people. And they all had it very scripted and they all had a very practiced script. I've seen very nice ones where you just go up onto Facebook Live just by yourself and then you just do your ritual. I've seen that a lot. So your intent into the world is important. In a lot of ways, what the internet does, it allows you to network so that your intent can be amplified, not only seen by other people, but also they can join in. And so Zoom, I recommend Zoom. I recommend Discord. Discord is actually turning into quite the system. But any of these systems that you, Facebook Messenger groups, they're useful. It isn't a matter of what are the resources, what are you comfortable with? But we started out, we started doing rituals back in the old days. I always found it a lot of fun. When we first started in 93, 94, we did it in chat rooms. Guess what? They still do it in chat rooms. We've done it on the radio, at Pagans Tonight Radio. We've done it on the radio. We've done radio. Pagans have always used the technology. So your online ritual. So, my covenant experience from Zoom falls flat. Zoom requires some learning and things like that. It falls flat. Try it on a telephone. Try it in a sort of audio version first. Do Blog Talk Radio gives you some cheap space. That's a good one. Or SoundCloud or things like that. Try it there first. It is not the same thing.
Zoom and music, you have to have the music actually farther away because Zoom does a good job of filtering out what it believes is background noise. because
Mhm.
it's made for professional settings where you don't expect background noise.
Right.
So you have to be positioned in the right place. We had the exact same thing with the drumming that we did for the Dream Workshop.
Oh, how can you follow me? I'm on Ed the Pagan, just everywhere in the world. I talk about the digital aura. Ed the Pagan. Ed the Pagan at Gmail is probably my direct email. I have Ed the Pagan on Facebook. I have Ed the Pagan on Twitter. I've taken a very active role in building my digital aura. I want to make sure that that at some point when you can do it, that you can find me. And I'm very grateful to have that name.
Yeah, I know that was a good call. Yeah, you can find most of us, or between Ed and I, just about every channel. I've been on social media since, well,
Yeah, I haven't mastered Slack yet. I'm having difficulty with that one.
call me when you want to. I run 9 different Slack channels for
Do
different
you?
companies. Pagan Pride uses it. Our Pagan Pride, Puget Sound Pagan Pride uses it extensively.
Oh, what do you mean keep the music speakers far away from the computer?
You need to be have the music in the right place. If it's too close, Zoom thinks that it's background noise and filters it out. So if it's in the right line with the microphone, it will then take over for the voice. So you can't do both at once. There are better programs for that. And you might even want to have dual mics. Zoom is not designed for that.
No, but within 6 months, Zoom is opening up their app. It looks like they're going to put their API app system out onto allowing third
It
party
is
changes.
out. Yeah, part of it is out there so that you can build extensions to it. Yeah, all of these things are going to change, and there's wonderful opportunities for us to connect. And you and I have talked about this for a couple of years now. And I've been online since the early 80s. And was a second generation internet developer. So I'm going to start looking to building a lot of these resources for pagans. I mean, I do in the business world, but I want to make sure that our community, just like this event, has great ways to connect. But I'll put my contact information in here because I don't want to monopolize Ed's time.
Oh, you're not. You're doing nothing of the sort. Doing nothing of the sort. I'm going to put that in there. So my big thing next is, well, so I love building spaces. And my next big space is going to be a psychic fair. And I'm dealing with a new type of website design called a Nexus. And people are going to go, what the heck is that? Trust me, in 3 years, you're probably going to say that or some other sort of buzzword that'll express it. And I'm using 3 different online services and an AI assistant to help me put together a psychic fair online. So, that sort of thing. So you can get on and not like, the phone services where you go through the systems, but really be interactive where you can meet psychics and talk to psychics and help them and vendors and things like that. So it's been a year. We've worked really hard this year. I will tell you. Yep, I love your thing, Reinnovator. I think it's been really kind of amazing. COVID has really allowed a lot of the ideas we've been talking about for years to come up. I've heard some of the professionals say this was like 10 years of, this is like planning what was planned 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Going out just happened to have happened today.
It is.
And I saw a number right here, 14% of our, prior to COVID, 14% of us shopped online. 86% of the economy is still through either mail order or mostly through retail. 27% of people have now moved up completely
That's
online.
about right. That's going to continue to grow.
And so that was a real kick in the butt.
Yeah.
And more than 70% of people have used online sort of systems. And so, yeah, absolutely. So I'm excited about this. And I want to thank everybody for allowing me to give this presentation for the first time. I'm planning to continue it. I'm actually really getting deeply into this sort of world, and I really appreciate it. We'll continue to put on events, and I think you'll see more of this. So yeah, just feel free to contact me.
Absolutely. Renee, Peter's got a question. what happens to those covens that do not embrace this?
Oh, the same thing as always. You don't have to embrace it. Don't. You'll continue to act in the same. Oberon's calling me. I have to give him a call back. That's so odd. You don't have to embrace it. Understand it's a matter of resources and growth. What is it that you want to accomplish? A coven, and my personal coven is not online. We don't talk online. Not really about that stuff because we want that to be very precious. And that's Black Moon Coven. But my tradition, everything I've ever done is online. So it's a matter of your resources. What is it that you want to accomplish? How intimate do you want to be with these individuals versus the outside world? So you can even siphon from the internet, like the old Witch Fox, and get a group that's very private. And there's lots and lots of groups that are private, just like families. And it'll always be out there. What this is really a question of, how do you accomplish something if you want to see the world or society around you change? Covens are really about internal work. So an online coven, you're really an on-time. Most real covens are not actually online. They are actually human beings that are participating and having a spiritual and emotional, mental connection, regardless if they're physically there or not physically there.
Thank you again for all of this. Any more information you want to drop into the chat so that people can connect with you? I did post the rest of the day's schedule and voter registration information. Please, please go out, make your intentions known, make sure you're registered to vote.
Yep. And so with that, thank you, everybody. And Catil, that makes a lot of sense to me. Energy doesn't cease to exist, only changes form, sort of way. Absolutely. And in the pagan community and through people, the actions such as Lawrence is doing here today, the community is getting closer and better than it ever has been. We are healthier than we've ever been. Blessed be.